Boss fights are really hard to do well. It's not difficult to find examples of bosses that aren't really that mechanically demanding but just soak up a ton of damage, making them take forever to beat. A boss like Destiny's Valis to Ark feels to me like more of a bullet sponge than an actual test of skill or strategy. My favorite boss fights are those that are challenging without being frustrating and make you use familiar mechanics in an unfamiliar way. The fight against Mr. Freeze in 2011's Batman Arkham City does this really well, and it's easily my favorite fight in the game. The first thing we need to consider is what defines Batman and Victor Freeze as characters, especially in relation to one another, because it's the basis upon which this fight was designed. Both are genius-level engineers with a huge arsenal of gadgets of their own design, but with one major difference. Batman's gadgets fit his one rule that he can never take a life, while Freeze's weapons are all lethal since he doesn't have this self-imposed restriction. It makes sense then that the boss fight is a stealth encounter, since to attack Freeze head-on would be suicide, and his technological prowess lends context to his ability to craft countermeasures to your attacks on the fly. This turns the fight into a game of cat and mouse that taps into the idea of Batman and Freeze being intellectual peers and makes you think just like Batman would, turning the fight into a moment when you really step into the role of Batman. This is basically the definition of immersion, which is key to really great game design, so I always like to call attention to it when I see it. Those countermeasures I mentioned a moment ago are the main challenge in this fight. Every move or gadget that you use against Freeze can only be used a single time, since he'll alter the arena or activate a device that prevents you from using it again. In your first playthrough, this won't be all that hard, since you only need to perform 5 different takedowns to beat him on normal difficulty, but the fight becomes much harder and more interesting on the second playthrough, called Story Plus, which is what you're seeing on screen. The most major changes in the second playthrough are remixed enemy groups and no counterattack indicators in combat, but these wouldn't have any effect on this boss fight, so when you're fighting Freeze, it means you have to use a total of 9 moves to win, almost double that of the first time you fight him. As a result, the fight's difficulty is in a really good spot because you have a lot of options at your disposal, but the encounter becomes more challenging the farther into it you get. As you steadily run out of takedowns to use, you'll find yourself frantically scanning the room for ways to set up an attack as you avoid getting caught. Freeze follows your footsteps exactly, so he'll converge on your location if you stay in one spot for too long, forcing you to be aware of your surroundings and constantly on the move. Even if you do find a momentary safe spot away from Freeze, like when you're walking on the rope from your line launcher, the Seekers he fires periodically will home in on your location, making you move again. That right there, the fact that you're never safe, is one of the smartest things about how this fight was designed. The first time you're in this area, it's a stealth encounter against Penguin's goons, and you're able to use the perches around the room to scope out the area and determine how best to clear the room. You're able to stay on these perches pretty much indefinitely, and this gives you some breathing room while you plan your attack. Because they're iced over when you return, however, you don't have the luxury of their safety when you fight Mr. Freeze. This, in addition to making the fight more challenging, engaging, and, fun, has the effect of making you more likely to find the little details here that flesh out the world of Arkham City. For example, keep an eye out for the ice sculptures you can find around the room. Victor Freeze is motivated solely by his desire to find a cure for his terminally ill wife, Nora, so these beautiful sculptures of her are a sign of his obsession, and he threatens you if you smash them. Doing so lets Freeze know where you are and draws him directly to you, and it's little details like this that show the love for the source material that we expect from Rocksteady's Arkham series. Now, since this is a level I'm covering here, it's probably not surprising that I think anyone who enjoys comics, video games, and/or happiness should play it. That said, this is a boss fight that I think anyone interested in making games needs to play for a couple of reasons. Its signature feature, Freeze's ability to prevent you from using any move twice, can be thought of on a basic level as a sort of big implementation of basic if statements. Also called if-then statements, these are sections of computer code that script a certain event to occur when a particular condition is met. For example, if Batman does a takedown from a floor grate, then Mr. Freeze will fill the grates with ice and Batman won't be able to enter them again. This is one of the most basic building blocks of computer code, especially when designing interactive systems, and by their nature, video games are interactive systems. I'm sure that the pseudocode I used as an example is a huge oversimplification of what's going on here, especially since I haven't actually seen the code itself, but throughout the fight we can see how Rocksteady built upon this basic coding device to create a really unique and engaging moment in the game. It's one of those incredible moments in gaming where you can see how you could take something as simple as an if statement and expand upon it to make something that's much more than the sum of its parts. Finally, it might not seem like a big deal at first glance, but the fact that this is a boss fight in a sequel is actually pretty important. Arkham City introduced a lot of new gadgets and abilities, and this fight requires you to be familiar with a great deal of this expanded skill set. You'll see a few of these gadgets used here, such as the Disruptor and the Remote Electrical Charge, and this new gear has uses both in stealth and open combat, as well as in navigating Arkham City itself. Considering how much was new to Arkham City, this boss fight really puts into perspective just how deep the stealth mechanics are and how many improvements Rocksteady made while building upon what was so successful in Arkham Asylum. Ultimately, this is a boss fight that tests you, and that's kind of the point. On a basic level, a boss fight in a video game is a test of your knowledge of the game, whether it's through mechanical skill, tactical prowess, or some combination of the two. The fight against Mr. Freeze is no different, constantly challenging you to be on the move while finding new ways to wear Freeze down. It challenges you to know your moves and the environment around you inside and out, setting you up for the stealth challenges to come, which are the toughest in the game's story mode. All told, despite the setting, this isn't a boss fight that's likely to leave you cold. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you'll join me again next time to check out another great level in gaming.